Hello, welcome to Ancient Astrology with Sam and Verity.
Hi, I'm Sam Bakewell.
And I'm Verity Hips. And today's episode 10 on the houses.
Yeah, so we'll be using whole sign house system for most of our lessons. So whole sign house system is the oldest house system, and it was used by the Hellenistic astrologers in the 1st century BC until about the 7th century.
Wow.
AD. It was lost around the Middle Ages and rediscovered in the last 20th century.
Wow, that's fascinating that it was lost for so long. And
yeah, well, you know, in my opinion, a lot of the work from the Arabs was mistranslated from when they translated from Arabic to Latin, but that's a whole nother story. So with whole sign house system, the chart equal to 360 degrees. With the whole house system, each house is equal to 30 degrees. So the sign on the cusp is contained in the same house. And there are other house systems also, which, you know, like for me personally, I will use both whole sign house system and equal house system. And equal house system just puts the ascendant right up until the top of the cusp, so that so let's say it was 29 degrees, and all the other houses would be 29 degrees, which I might actually just I don't know whether I've got a chart ready actually for that. I think I have the Alcobitius one ready. All right, so I will get to that shortly.
Yeah, that'd be good to see.
Yeah, okay. So quadrant division house systems use the ascendant and the midheaven as the calculation for the house cusp. So there's the quadrant house systems, there's Alcobitius, there's quite a lot actually, but just at the top of my head, Alcobitius, Regiomontanus, Porphyry, Placidus, and there's another one which is popular with German astrologers. I think it's German astrologers, but it's called Koch.
Yeah, so, Placidus I've heard a lot about.
Yeah,
that gets used quite a lot.
The most popular.
Yeah.
So yeah, for our lessons, it will be whole sign and equal house for most of the journey.
Okay. Equal house, interesting. Yeah, so 29 degrees ascendant would usually be way down the bottom.
Exactly.
Right, interesting.
So if you remember my chart from our last lesson, I have these planets, all the Virgo planets are in the 7th house by whole sign house system.
Yes, now they've been moved down into the 6th house.
So you can see that other certain planets are stronger than what you would have first thought of, like Mars was in the 6th house. And so how do you use this, you know, when you're working with a chart? For me, I want to see how strong these planets are, and is there a 5th house kind of setup for Mars when Mars is normally in the 6th house by whole sign. How would somebody read that? Right?
Yeah.
And we'll go through the topics shortly.
Yes. Does it sometimes help to fill in if there's sort of a detail about someone or something that's happening to them? Does it sometimes help to look at this as well and say, that could be why this is happening? Sometimes it might answer those sort of questions. So
you're reading the two charts simultaneously, basically, you know.
Giving a fuller picture of...
So it starts to get very complicated, but you know, at the beginning I just recommend to use the one house system, the whole house system, and then if you were seeing clients, then you would have a look at both both charts. But you know, if your preferred chart is Alcobitius, well, or Placidus, you know, use that, but also incorporate it with the whole sign house system.
I guess because that is the oldest system, so it has
I just find it very accurate. So I
enjoy using it.
I predict through whole sign, and I've had so much accuracy with that. You know, I started off with Alcobitius.
It's so clear cut, isn't it? You know?
It makes it an easier read.
Yes.
So, you know, I started off with Alcobitius, and so that can be very complicated because you have what is called intercepted houses. So for me, I would have a Pisces ascendant, but I would have Aries also on the cusp of that house.
Yeah.
So I'm reading 4 planets basically for my personality, and I just found that wasn't as accurate as a whole sign house system when I was doing my monthly reports for people. So, you know,
it would add a layer of sort of complexity to it, because, well, for example, like, you know, you have masculine and feminine signs next to each other.
So I would have a feminine sign and I'd have a masculine sign.
In that, so then it would be, instead of just being able to say clear cut, oh, you've got a feminine ascendant, all of a sudden there's that masculine energy in there to think about.
That's correct.
And there's a lot more planets coming in.
So that makes it very complicated, and it's fine, you know, if you've been reading a chart like that, you know, through Placidus or whatever house system, you know, I'm just saying, have a look at the whole sign house system as well, you know, and you can read the 2 charts simultaneously.
Yeah, they probably help to look at both for maybe different reasons. So maybe.
Well, for techniques, like when we get into techniques, I don't know whether we'll ever do that on a podcast because, you know, most of my teaching is with one-on-one. So, you know, to teach something like children or you know, how many children you think somebody could have, you know, we're using another house system. Normally I'm using equal house system for that, you know, so, but I'm still looking at the whole sign house system. So I probably haven't really made that clear enough for people, but let's go through the topics to start off with. So the first house.
Visually and just how it, for like maybe the beginners, when we are talking about it being split up, how it's split up into 12 houses. And so we have our quadrants, you know, so we have this quadrant for the 1st, 2nd and 3rd house, and the 4th, 5th and 6th would be another quadrant, 7th, 8th and 9th, another quadrant, and the 10th, 11th and 12th, another quadrant. So we have our angular houses. So the 1st, 4th, 7th and 10th are our angular houses. Planets in that house are capable of 100% of its energy. So they're strong. They can deliver whatever they're meant to deliver. And we have the 2nd house, the 5th house, the 8th house, and the 11th house are called succedent houses. And so these houses are capable of 50% of its energy. So if you have a planet in that house, it's still very strong, but it's not going to be all the time. So, you know, we're talking about a topic. You might have a topic that doesn't come to the forefront as an event, or that person is not as reliable, but still it's still very good, right? Then we have our cadent houses. So we have our 3rd, 6th, 9th and 12th houses. So they're our cadent houses, and they are capable, those houses are capable of 25%. So they're not as strong. So the energies doesn't mean that they don't ever perform. It means that there's only these smaller chances or smaller opportunities. And if you found that you had your ascendant, the native's ascendant in like the 6th house, and let's say it was Libra, and there was 2, so you've got Venus as your lord of Libra, and then you have the exalted lord Saturn, and they were both in the 6th house. So that kind of makes somebody a bit more unreliable to go to work, right? So you've got the 6th house would be work, but also unreliable because they could be ill. But when they're angular, when the native is angular in the 4th house, well, then that brings on a whole different right. So if they had like the Saturn and the Venus in the 4th house, it could be a bigger emphasis on maybe building up a home or a strong connection to their father, or something to do with maybe, I guess, family. Home. Home. And that would be a stronger point.
Father's significant in whatever way he's significant, depending on the energy.
And I guess if it's because we were going over planets before this episode, So if it's like Saturn or Mars in the fourth, that could be more of like a malefic sort of energy there.
It can be, and yeah, it depends on the malefic of sect.
Mm.
After we visited this sect
Mhm.
lesson last episode,
Mhm.
it depends on the sect. You know, obviously, if it's going to be the outer sect planet, well, then it will be a bit. It will be challenging. But then, if you had, you know, your malefic of sect with dignity, like I said last episode, it won't be as challenging. But you know, that could also be the fourth house. Let's say it was Saturn and it wasn't the malefic sect and it didn't have dignity. Well, then you could think that that native is always doing some sort of construction or something going on in their home. Their house is falling apart, or they're depending on the ascendant and the lords of the ascendant. You know, like if the lords of the ascendant aren't in great shape, well, then the fourth house Saturn will be playing out as if they are overworked or the house is falling apart. But if it's in great shape, right, and then it is they're doing construction. So, and sometimes it will change. So, you know, no matter what happens, Saturn will say construction.
Yeah, there might be work going on, but it's always going on, or it's not finished.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a little time to be completed. There's just something half done.
Yeah.
Some people, I think, having that, it's like a saving grace to always have some sort of project going on in their house, isn't it? Yeah. It'd be a good way.
Actually, I know somebody who has Saturn in Pisces in that fourth house, and it's not their malefic sect, and they that's exactly how it plays out for them.
Yeah, I also know someone.
Poses the moon. Yeah,
and it's funny. There's always things going on.
Yeah, the half done jobs.
Yep,
you know,
waiting to be finished, and then they move on to something else.
The pole still sitting on holding the roof or something. But
it's probably the best thing to be going on.
Well, at least something's getting done, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's go through the houses and what they represent. And so the native is the first house. It is the most important house out of the 12 houses.
Like being important, because it is like the native's life, body, and mind. That's so significant. But I feel like sometimes it's challenging to put that in words to get it across to people.
Well, it depends on what's on the cusp of that house and where those planets are placed. You know, so the ancients would liken it to a boat or ship. You know, so the ship is, I'm not quite sure which way it worked, but let's say the ship was the first house, and the steering of the ship would be with the lords of the. So how do you steer your ship? You know?
Yes. Yeah.
The helm, they used to call it. So it depends on where the placement is, how well you are experiencing your body, because that is your body and your mind. So what makes you tick, where your motivation is. So if the Lord was in the second house, then what's your motivation?
Most likely money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Building up wealth and yes.
Making it, spending it. So it's a very important house, the first house, and capable of 100% of its energy. So the second house is wealth, movable wealth. So
it sort of makes sense, because you do need money and support and in life, but you don't need it as much as you need, you know, your body, your mind. It's nice to have, but you can get by sometimes without it. Sometimes you'll have a lot, sometimes not. So it makes sense.
I'm always pretty envious of people that got Jupiter in that second house. Well, that's very nice.
That would be so nice.
Or the sun. So long as it's not an Aquarius, but the sun generally in that second house is good for finance as well. So you have it's your money, you know, what's in your pocket, what you can move, your possessions and support. So the third house, short journeys, siblings, lower education and short courses and communication. So short journeys, that can be like your out of your routine, or it can actually be your routine. So like just traveling to work back and forth, you're like going down to from us here in Perth, you know, doing a 2-hour trip down to Bustleton. It could be that kind of short journey as well. So it does depend on what the planet is, what the planet is, or what's on the cusp, you know, on that particular house. Siblings, so generally siblings, and a lower education. So we normally find primary school here. So this can tell us whether the native has had a good experience in primary school.
Yeah, I have Venus there, and I loved primary school. Didn't really like high school, but I loved primary school. Yeah. Very fond memories of it.
Yeah. And exactly. So high school is the 9th house. So, you know, 9th house, if it's debilitated, well, then you're not going to enjoy high school. And even if you went to university, you know, that would be hard or struggle or something like that. You know, we feel like, I didn't get what I wanted out of that particular education.
And I love short courses. I love purchasing short courses online. I don't always get them done as quickly as I'd like to. But I do love the idea of a short course.
So your Venus would connect to your 2nd house, because your 1st house is Aries, then you have Taurus, and then you have Gemini, but you have Venus here in Gemini. So Venus is connecting to the 2nd house, spending money on short courses. So communication. So communication is a quite a big word, really. It's books, magazines, written reports, it's signing documents, it's our speech, it's books, you know, so it's a lot of things.
And would community and neighbours also fall in the 3rd house?
Yes, it does. Actually, we haven't got it there, only because
look how big those words are in that section.
Can't
fit anymore.
Please excuse us, because we're not digital artists, but we're doing our best.
We tried. And there's some big
so
words there.
Exactly, neighbours comes into that. So if you had you know, a problematic 3rd house, well, then you may have problems with your neighbours, especially if you live in apartments or something like that. You know? And it can be mixed. So if you lived in an apartment, let's say, and you had a malefic also, and you had 2 benefics there, well, then, you know, you're going to have a problem with a certain neighbour and the other neighbour. That
definitely happens to people, doesn't it? There's that one neighbour.
Exactly. Father, home, and your land for the 4th house. So some will also say all your relatives,
like family.
And what's underground, and the end of the matter. That's another thing that is used quite a lot. So I don't actually use the end of the matter for the 4th house. You might use that more so if you were a horary astrologer, but
and is that to do with more sort of like karmic things? Is it sort of like that? Because it's like I've heard the 4th and 10th, because, you know, they are on polar parts of the chart of the circle, you know, they're opposites, that it's kind of like quite karmic, those 2 places.
I mean, I can't prove karma. So for me, I'm about proving an event happening. Did you you know, have lunch with your sibling? Did you send money to your father? You know, whatever the chart's saying. So for me, karma is something that, not that I don't believe in karma, it's just not something I would read into a reading.
That makes sense. And so, I think I've heard as well, lineage, like what you've not really inherited, I guess, but kind of like your ancestors.
Yes, a lot of people use it for your ancestors. So I have other methods which I probably wouldn't teach on the podcast how to find different people in your natal chart. That's really for my students that sit around my table. But yeah, there was another method that's much more accurate than that. But yeah, if you wanted to keep it vague, you probably could.
But I think father, home, and land and family are very big parts of our lives, which makes sense why it's in the 4th house of, you know, or the 100%. It's very significant, those things, even though it looks smaller, you know, written down. They're very significant things, you know, your home.
Well, those angles are very powerful, you know, they're powerful people in our lives, you know, and doesn't mean that you had a great relationship with them, but they're just powerful.
Yeah,
you know?
They definitely have an impact.
Just like the sun and the moon for the mother and father, both powerful luminaries, planets for us. So the angles are not the 10th and the 4th, you know, father and mother.
Yes.
Of the people, the 7th, you know, so they're
exactly. It's about you and very significant people and relationships, isn't it?
So I feel like I might forget a few things because we've only got a little bit up here, a few topics, but it's probably a great place to start anyway. You know? So the 5th house, children, entertainment, gaming, holidays, and procreation. So your children. Sometimes I have seen with people that don't have children, they have godchildren, you know, that they have planets in that particular area, and that godchild is very important to them. So it's children in general. Entertainment, so it's fun and entertainment. So whatever you find that's fun, socializing, going out for lunch, all those sort of things as, you know, entertainment. Gaming, so, you know, if you're into gaming, you know, that house, if you have Saturn in that house, you're not going to be you probably won't be necessarily into gaming because, you know, Saturn's restricting all that fun sort of side of things.
And so like hard work would be fun more than
or it's about time, you know, like, okay, let's go and have fun. But, you know, I want to be there at 3 o'clock and I want to be, I've only got 1 hour to be there, you know, and I'm driving there. So they're making it sort of restricting their fun side of things. But, you know, it depends. It could be Saturn in Aries, but they've got the Mars and they've got the Sun on the cusp, so that you've got to read the others planets as well.
So holidays.
So yes, that's holidays and procreation.
So does the holidays part kind of go in as well with the 3rd and the 9th house, which is sort of travel and short journeys, or is it more like holidays, like celebrations? Like
I really separate them. So when I'm doing my readings, I will, like, if let's say you had a 3rd, 5th, and 9th house, and they all the same planet ruling it. You know, one's in the 5th house and it rules the 9th and the 3rd. So to me, that is a holiday within a long distance holiday where you are on holidays, but there's a lot of short trips in between, you know. So
like you want to go and look at other places.
So you're going, whether you're driving or you're
maybe
Europe and whatever. Exactly.
That makes sense.
And sometimes, you know, it might be set up where it's just a holiday. And some people, like if you had the 5th house that was really in great shape, but you had your 9th house not in great shape, well, then I would be suggesting holidays. Make it a holiday. Don't make it a long distance holiday.
Like a journey.
Long distance.
Yes, because sometimes travel is not really about a holiday. It's about an adventure or a journey, isn't it?
Or put out those words where even if you were going overseas and it was a long distance, you know, put out that energy that this is a holiday.
A fun holiday.
This is a holiday. I love my holiday. Anyway, okay, so we have groups of people as well at the 5th house. So often if I can see somebody's in the 5th house and it's in great shape, well then I'll be saying, you know, mixing with groups of people.
Maybe they love hosting things at their house.
Yep. You know, like one comes to mind that I did recently was, you know, meditation. So, you know, they go do group meditation.
Oh, yeah.
So the 5th house and 7th house, so connect, you know, other people, and the 5th house having fun with other people. But of course, the planets give you a lot more information also.
And what sign it is as well. Yeah, and how.
And we were talking about before filming creativity for that.
Yes,
5th house.
Because I've heard a lot about creativity and
romance
and dating. Yes, well.
I mean, like the 5th house. Okay, so I did a reading for a client who had a very debilitated 7th house and but had a fantastic 5th house with the sun in there. And I said, well, you know, with your relationship, you just, if you keep it fun and you know, have lots of dates instead of, you know, getting the serious relationship, that's probably going to work better for you. Because, you know, she was a lot older and anyway, so basically the 5th house can be dating, you know, but the 7th house would be a relationship. So sometimes if somebody is new to a relationship, I have to work out, are they just a boyfriend or girlfriend? And are they 5th house or are they 7th house? You know, so sometimes that does get a bit complicated.
Yes.
Because, you know, procreation, you know, can be just lovers, you know, 5th house lovers.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to be married or even with someone long term.
Exactly. Everybody.
It can
exactly.
happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And each to their own. Okay, so and the creativity, you know, Venus does rejoice in that house, and we will be doing, we will be sitting on these houses for a few episodes, so we will look at the rejoicing later on. But so that does tell you that there is creativity and romance and fun and social things, everything Venus stands for. But I would look to Venus for the creativity for the native or the ascendant and the lords of the ascendant, especially if it's if it is Venus or if it's a feminine sign, or if the lord of that first of the ascendant is in a feminine sign, then I would be seeing creativity, because normally it's feminine signs which are creative. So we get it from a few things. It's not just, you know, not just Venus, but Venus would be helpful as well. So yeah, so a few things to look at.
Yeah, it's quite a packed house, isn't it? It's got a lot going on as well.
Yeah, it's a big house, important house, you know, because it's where your children are.
Yes.
So 6th house, minor health.
Yeah.
Small animals, being at service, subordinates, and work. Okay, so you know the ancients would be quite determined to with their words, and they would say slaves.
Yes.
So I mean, some people do have a slave type of life even now. You know?
Which can be probably quite a confronting word for some people to hear. But if you look at the way some people's lives do pan out, when they're always at service to others or doing a lot of hard work, but for not much, you know, remuneration, you know, money for it. It almost does paint that sort of a picture of energy, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I've just changed that to subordinates for me.
I think that's a great word to use.
Because it can be people who work underneath you, or you work in a subordinate job. If you had a 6th house and 10th house, you know, that tells me that you, and it depends on the planet and sign, that you work very hard at your career or job, you know, that you're very hands-on with this role, this job. Okay, so minor health is exactly what it is. It's minor health, but if you had a 6th house, 8th house, or 12th house with the other health areas, well then, you know, that minor health can become quite serious. And I'm not saying serious like something life-threatening. It can be just even a cough and cold that just becomes more perseverance,
and some
or
people
that's probably not the right word.
go, like exactly. It hangs around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Some colds and coughs, they just linger and you can't get rid of one of the symptoms for a long time. And I feel like some people, you definitely see they go through phases where like just, illnesses just keep running through the house, or like they just keep getting sick, and then their partner gets it, and then maybe their children, or they just keep getting sick and they have all this time off work. And it's interesting actually how it connects the two, doesn't it? Like if you've got a cough or cold, especially nowadays, people won't, then be able to go into work. So it affects that.
I know.
But I remember being a lot younger. If I had a cough or a cold, I was
you
still expected to go to work.
Yeah, go to work, go to school.
Kind of that whole like,
now it's kind of frowned upon.
You need to still work, show up to work.
Which
makes a lot more changed, hasn't it?
It's a lot more inconsistent then, isn't it?
Yes,
people are a lot more, lot less reliable in the workplace now.
It's more okay. There's more of a culture, I find, in the workplaces I've experienced and people around me. Where it's like, oh, don't come in, you're sick. Like, no, that's fine. Take the time off. Whereas it used to be,
exactly.
They're sick again. You get fired for it. And so I feel like that's relaxed a bit, which is interesting. But it definitely affects your work if you're going through a season of a lot of illness.
And it depends on the planet, what's in that house, of how sick you get. And it depends also on the ascendant. Everything always goes back to the ascendant. So if the native and their lords are in good shape and in good houses, then the native is not going to get so sick. But if it's something telling me that they are, if not the planets or the exalted lord of the first is not in great shape, then they will I would be saying more health
and some people
problems.
that is more of a theme, isn't it? It's health issues.
So you might have a planet there, but not necessarily it's going to be for you if you have got a strong body.
It could be people in your workplace, or
exactly.
Like I find having,
so we've got so much to get through. I mean, not for this episode, but we've got quite a few other staying on the houses for quite a few episodes. Okay, so what else? Small animals. All right, so small animal, dogs, cats, cows, maybe would be cows. I do have farmer, and I normally will, and the 6th house is ruled by Taurus, and they do have cows. So, sometimes it's as easy as that. Horses and camels will be up here, the 12th house, 6th house, cats. And
I think most people's lives, smaller animals are more of a day-to-day sort of part of it.
Exactly. So being at service. So, pretty much that, subordinates and work and your work. So you'll, depending on what you do for a living, it can be your daily work. It can be somebody who's not high up in a job, like I used to work in a warehouse. So that job would be in the 6th house. So all my experiences are generally 6th house. All right, so the 7th house is marriage, partnership, open enemies, and other people. So marriage, so any relationship, basically, not necessarily people are going to have a legitimate marriage. Some will have de facto relationships. Some live in separate houses, but they're together for many, many years, so it's just your relationship, basically.
And you can go from partnership, marriage, to being open enemies.
I know.
It all kind of play out with the same person, can't it?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that would be telling of, your cusp lord as well. So
and other people. So does that mean just a general public, like people out and about?
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it can really kind of shape the way you see the world, can't it? If you keep coming into people with certain energy all the time. So other people, that's strangers, the lady that serves you at Coles or Woolies, they're all other people.
Yeah. Your open enemies, well, that's pretty obvious, but even if there was a court case, you know, that would be the opposition party, you know, that they're your enemies. Well, but open enemies, because they're sitting there. Your secret enemies are in the 12th house, you know, they're open enemies.
You're aware of who they are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those people that have a connection between their 7th and 12th, you know, they would have their secret enemies, those that talk about them behind their back, you know, they will know because they become their open enemy. So yes, if you've had that kind of connection in your chart.
And I guess, people, I think, could be like, oh, if they don't have a planet there, what does that mean? You know, does that mean I won't get married? Or
no, because it's there's so much to look at with the chart, you know, and the cusp lord is one thing for the 7th house for a relationship. So for a woman, it's a sun. Some will say it's Mars as well. For a man, it's the moon and Venus. So it's a lot more to relationships than just the 7th house, but it is that's the top one, the topics it rules. So the 8th house is a succedent house. I mean, hopefully everyone remembers their angular succedent and cadent houses. We have death, sickness, and inheritance. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So when we're doing predictions, you know, we often go through an 8th house. You might even have an 8th house year.
Yeah.
So for some people, it can be very frightening if they're new to astrology, but you can only die once. So
yes. And
it's
luckily
not necessarily going to be about that. Yeah. There's a lot more to houses than just that.
Exactly. And I was going through mine when I sort of started to learn more from you. So yeah, I was already in it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I haven't died. So, okay.
Yeah.
But I think it can be, what do you think about this? Like kind of like a death of a part of you and a rebirth. I kind of feel that.
I don't look at things so spiritually when I do astrology. Not that I don't think spiritually.
Yes.
But I'm I need the proof. So for me, what I've found for myself and others personally, it can be your health. You know, sometimes it's even like a thought, because you know, prediction is a tick list, and it can be like, oh, I hope I'm not going to die. I hope this isn't going to kill me.
Death more this year.
Yeah, something can just enter your mind.
Maybe
where
organising your will suddenly, you might feel an urge to.
Well, we travel through these houses all the time, so it's not going to be that all the time. So you know, there's lots of layers.
Yeah.
But it will show your death. Yeah. When the time is timed.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's quite right.
Well, all these houses are telling of your experiences, you know, and of course they do change, and we do have our solar return, you know, that will be something for now for that year. So it's not something that you need to worry about, you know.
And I guess death of other people as well. Like when I went through that year, my grandfather did.
Well, this is the native's death.
Oh, okay. So it's not to do with other people's deaths.
Unless that person happens to their death area falls in your 8th house.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
Yeah. I've heard some astrologers as well mention sex in
this. Please don't hurt my ears. Please don't use sex for the 8th house. There's no one before the Arabs that used the 8th house for sex, so it is just definitely not.
So which
why would we have a 5th house?
So 5th with the children and the procreation, and the fun, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with that idea with the 8th house, but somehow it's cottoned on to a lot of people. One word make such a big mistake. So a ninth house, long distance travel, higher education and religion. So long distance travel, anything that's overseas basically, or, you know, even from Perth to Melbourne is, is quite a distance. And higher education, so that's high school, that's if you went to TAFE here in Australia, or you went to university.
College.
Exactly. So any sort of higher education. And religion. And people that have that, like if you had a ninth and sixth, you know, this could be somebody who is working for you but has more of an education than you do. So I always have professionals for the ninth house as well. So if I'm writing a report for somebody and there's a sixth and ninth and even a second, I like to see a second that they are paying somebody to do some sort of work on whatever area, you know. It's stated. So the 10th house is the mother, career, government, and the public. And one of our angle houses. And so it starts off with the mother, and it will always be mother because it's it represents mother, your career, the government. So sometimes that works for people, and other time, you know, it's not really activating as a government as a government. And the public. So
that differs to other people in the sense that it's talking about like the greater population of things. Is that correct? Versus people you interact with daily. Because you know how in the seventh house,
interact with
so seventh house, other people, it's more kind of like, you know, the cashier, the public around you. Is 10th house the public more like the public sort of as in this event will affect the public?
Yes, when I'm doing mundane, I definitely would look at that.
Is that kind of how that term falls into?
And like, let's say somebody had a planet up there, and they had a strong sun, or it was the sun, and it wasn't debilitating. Then I would be thinking, you know, they like they're happy with the attention. So
that makes sense.
Or if
being
they had
seen in public.
Or it could be like if they're traveling through that 10th house month, they're doing a lot of more posting or Instagrams, or
they get recognition for something.
Exactly.
Right. That clears that up for me. Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, good. All right, the 11th house, friends, hopes and wishes. So it doesn't sound like it's much at all, but if you got
be a pretty big deal to you though, can't
it? If you're looking for a parking spot and you just happen to have a Venus or Jupiter in that house, you know, that's one of those people that they get parking at one of those shopping complexes in the middle of the day on a weekend, and they just put it out there and they get it, you know. So, and that's also people who have lotto wins as well.
That would be nice. And friends is always nice to have, isn't it?
This house, I normally find the 5th house, normally like gambling or casinos and things like that, where the 11th house is more lotto wins. But sometimes it works both ways, you know. It can be the other way because it's still a nice friendly house, you know. But most of the time when I'm trying to be quite specific, I'll be using the 11th for those sort of wins. And it can also be just like a raffle ticket win, you know. So you normally find that if they do have a good planet there, they'd have lots of these sort of wins. And I've predicted that for people many a times, and they've always gone, I have. So it's just, it is what it is.
And does networking fall in there as well, in groups, like larger groups?
It probably could do. I mean, thinking about groups and friends also, the 3rd house is also friends, but they would be like close friends that are like siblings to you.
Right.
And so I use that. And networks and we probably could use the 11th as networking and people that you're familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't have to be your group of friends. You know, you've still got the 5th house as groups. So if you had a 5th, 11th, and the 1st, or, you know, the 1st was in the 11th, you know, that person is very much interested in their friends and being with their friends, socializing with their friends. So, you know, there's got to be some sort of 5th house thing going on regardless, you know. Even if it's not, that planet's not connecting to the 5th house, because what do they do with their friends, you know? Okay, 12th house is serious illness, institutions, hospitals, large animals, secret enemies. So serious illnesses. So I've heard lots of different things from different astrologers, but you know, this is what I've used, and I found that it works. So that can be something that's longer, lingering, something that you might even be born with. It really depends on your natal chart. Institutions, sometimes I find that people like if you have Saturn ruling that house, it's almost like you just want to isolate yourself from everyone.
That's a good point for isolation. I've seen that come up.
So you want to create your own institution, basically, you know.
Because institutions can be quite isolating, whether it's, you know, maybe you have to go to hospital because you're unwell, so you're away, or it's, you know, it can be prison.
Exactly, prison, that's right.
Yeah.
And so you create your own little
or like a detention center,
prison,
things like that.
Hospitals, so this is also, I also use medical centers for this area. So not necessarily that they are going to hospital. Sometimes they might be just visiting a hospital. And sometimes it's people that work in hospitals, you know, if there's a 12th and 10th, and like Secret Service people who work undercover, you know, there's probably a COVID thing happening there with the 12th and the 10th house. Large animals, so horses, camels, what else? Elephants, you know, just large animals. And secret enemies.
So could that be like, if you were, you know, your house was burgled or something like that, and you never know who did it? Is that kind of like a secret enemy?
Well, horary astrologers.
They've done something to you, but you never know who it is. I know. Something like
pretty
that.
horrible experience. All right, so we have got a lot more to cover, obviously, with houses. You know, we didn't really get to the ascendant and the MC. So there's quite a few things, but we might tackle that in our next podcast because there's just so much to cover.
Yes, there is. I think that's a good idea.
I mean, the ascendant, you know, it's just depicts the sign that's rising. And fortunately these days we don't have to do the calculation by hand, but even though I did it without my calculation exam, I had to study that, I wouldn't want to have to do it again.
It would be quite time consuming, wouldn't it? Not just to be able to you know, go on a website and type in the details and it come up. It would take a bit longer.
Exactly. So so we won't worry too much about that calculation of the ascendant or the MC, and we haven't even discussed the MC, but we might do that a bit next time.
I think that's a great idea. I think there's definitely a lot to
take
cover.
in.
But I think it's really, I really liked what you said about how the whole sort of house chart is set up by the ascendant. That's kind of like the ship. And that kind of guides how it will play out. It's very interesting.
I know. You know, they the ancients have unique ways of expressing, you know, a chart, and you know, sometimes it's really helpful.
And I think it's good to know. So basically, you've got your signs, your planets, and then your houses and how they all play together and are connected. So you can't just look at really any of it in isolation.
No,
the full picture.
But always remember that the planets are the star of the show. You know, they are. You can actually read somebody's life a little bit, not accurately.
If you don't know their ascendant.
But you can't read somebody's chart with just the houses.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah, because houses are just sort of like parts of our lives, aren't they? And then where the planets are and what sign the houses are give that extra information of
so we're trying to be as accurate as we possibly can with our readings, and with like some of these viewers are just going to be using this for themselves and helping them through their own life, and that's a way to learn anyway. And we just want them to be as accurate as possible. So,
and it would be interesting as well, maybe to look at how different things sort of happen, like when you have lots of planets in a house, things like that. Maybe we can look at that as well, like stelliums.
We will be doing that. That's a few classes down the road. But there's a lot to learn, and once we've been on the houses for a bit, we can start jumping around a lot more and start delineating a bit more with the charts.
It's sort of building up, isn't it? The knowledge, just
layer upon layer.
Just so you sort of, when we do sort of jump around, you have that basis of what we're talking about. So like the houses, the planets, the signs, what they mean, and then that can help when we shift to different topics. Having that foundation.
Well, our 4 components for astrology: planets, signs, houses, aspects. And just adding the layer upon layer. I mean, it's not a 10-week course. It's really for the serious person who wants to know.
Know the truth. It takes a very long time.
It can take a long time. Depends on your study.
And what you want to know.
All right. So if you like this post, please like it.
Please like it. Or
subscribe.
Subscribing. And that way we know, what to do more of. And,
and we love your comments.
Keep us going. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed our episode on the houses, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye for now.